Thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. Now, let's open questions and comments from audience. If you have any questions, please describe in a Q&A column. But before replying to the audience questions, I have one question for Dr. Jerosinska. I'm very impressed the activities of the Task Force on Health and WHO, that the policy making of not only for EU but also that UN, WHO is based on the science evidence very much. I suppose that it would be difficult for all of the members of the executive body of LATAP or all of the members of EU Parliament to understand the specific scientific evidence which should be discussed with Task Force Health as inside expert of WHO. But EU Parliament, the executive body, rely on the outcome of the expert discussions so much. Is it the custom or is it the very usual way of Europe, or it is described in a law, something legislation of the UN or something like that? So I want to ask you that point.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is indeed a big responsibility, this sense of trust. And when I introduce the guidelines and this process slide, sometimes people, oh, it's so boring, it's these processes. But it is really crucial that, and this is the basis of the robustness of these recommendations. The fact that these elements like systematic reviews, that they are published in a peer-reviewed journal. So there is another round of quality check, that all these methodological documents are also publicly available. So there is this element also of transparency. I can say, you know, the guidelines, it took 5 years to develop the guidelines, 5 years of very dedicated work of a wide group of experts. And these all steps need to be properly documented so that the users, the user community can entrust it. So it is done, you know, the best to the best of the abilities. For the guidelines, WHO is also having a special handbook, which is prescribing the steps of the guideline development. There are also, I can speak for WHO, and I'm sure that applies to other UN agencies. Also, when it comes to different expert groups, that the issue of their eligibility, assessment of potential conflicts of interest. So this is a very important aspect of the activities, which taken all together, I hope it is building this trust in these products, which are the reviews and synthesis of the evidence to provide this up-to-date public health advice.
Okay, thank you very much. It takes very very huge effort from the scientist side to the policy making process. Yeah, I'm very impressed. Thank you very much. So if there is no questions about these topics, the last presentation by Schnauer, so sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Schausner was skipped because of that technical problem. So Dr. Sase, please.
Thank you, Dr. Yamashita. Thank you, Mr. Schausner. Welcome back to the seminar. Thank you for your presentation about the modeling and mapping in Europe. And then, in my understanding, in Europe, due to their Gothenburg protocols, the emission has been successfully reduced, and then accordingly, the impacts on ecosystems have been reduced, especially for acidification risk. Yeah, and then but still eutrophication risk. In other words, nitrogen, excess nitrogen or nitrogen saturation, still the problem, right? And then
that's right.
Even for acidification, there is still some high risk area. You show in the second last or third last slides or something. Yeah. What kind of the area is the most sensitive for the acidification risk?
Yeah, we have there a double, so to say, effects. So one of the effects are that these are areas with very poor and sandy soils where the weathering rates of base cation is really low. But you also have a mechanistic problem that in the model, there are some areas, it could happen that the results of the modeling is ending up in a really, really low maximum for sulfur input. And that's basically due to the model, and because of the ANC leaching can be kind of really highly set on a high value. We are actually investigating especially this area with the critical load exceedances and try to estimate if it's due to real elevated deposition or if it's due to really low estimations of the critical load, because we also are in contact with forest managers, and there is evidence that some forest managers even considering to add additionally sulfur into their nutrition system, because they find evidence that there is too little sulfur. But this is really a mechanistic modeling problem. We cannot tackle it at the moment. But yes, central regions are still have elevated. And what I would like to mention here, that this is really the steady state approach is really just looking at the time now. But you have to consider that 20 years, for example, of exceedance of critical load for acidification has impact still. Some forest ecosystem needs still liming in central of Europe because of the past deposition. So, but that's then beyond, that is more in the focus of dynamic modeling. It's beyond of the approach of the steady state critical load. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for your explanation. As for the nitrogen, the problem is still very clear. So how do you discuss the possible solution to reduce the nitrogen deposition in Europe?
Yeah, that's really a tricky problem, actually. And there are several people that starting presentations about the convention with the sentence, "Thank God we started to reduce sulfur first," because nitrogen is also considered, of course, as a nutrient. So it is needed by the ecosystem. And it's also part as a byproduct of agriculture. And the products of the agriculture are also quite much in need of the public, so to say, of people. We have it's a tricky situation. Part of it is, or part of the solution is that we try to explain to the people and also the facility manager that it is really costful to clean the water supply. The elevated nitrogen leads to elevated nitrogen in the soil water, and this is really hard to tackle, and it costs a lot to clean the air from nitrogen in. So we try to communicate that elevated critical load exceedances leads to elevated nitrogen in the groundwater, and this leads to more costs. So this is one part, but again, there are still not a lot of good solutions at the moment at hand, I have to say. Yeah.
Sure. Now we have the question from the floor. This is a question. Thomas, can you
Yes.
see this one?
Yes, I can see.
Can you answer to this question?
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to address the complexity, and I think we need to understand the full nitrogen cycle. I mean, there are already approaches about the global boundaries or the global boundaries of nitrogen introduced into the atmosphere and introduced in the process. And I simply think that if we understand the full cycle, then maybe we see where we can adapt better. I mean, there are ways, for example, for cattle production and so on, where you can reduce nitrogen, but it all comes down to management and to the people to realize that probably the food consumption, and this is really a touchy item, of course, but the consumption of, for example, meat in Europe is probably on a too high level, and maybe we need to price the emissions of nitrogen into this equation. Again, elevated nitrogen leads to impacts in the ecosystem, leads to more costs of clean your groundwater, your drinking water. Maybe these costs need to be included, but as it is now, we do not have a simple solution. I can tell you, it's really tricky to address this. And it's also tricky because even if we know that there are sensitive ecosystems maybe losing species, it is still an important or a tricky discussion to explain to the people why are these lost species are so important for us. The whole concept of biodiversity is, from my point of view, not really well acknowledged in the society. It's a totally different story compared to the WHO presentation we just had. If you tell the people that you probably die earlier because of air pollution, this is something that you can sell easily. But telling the people that there are plants that will be lost, this is really hard to sell. So I think come up with a clear message to the people what they will lose by still having this high level of emissions of nitrogen. This is a communication. We need a better communication and a better communication strategy. Maybe this is an approach. I hope this tackles it. Please write me a mail if not.
You. And then no more questions. So thank you, Thomas. We would like to close this session, and then we move to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.